Hello, today I want to discuss the 12 books that I would like to read this year. So one of my big goals this year is to get my owned TBR down because I think it's at something like 175 books. And I read about 150 books a year, so I'm never going to read just that, but there are definitely some I want to prioritize. So that is what we are going to be discussing today. So first book on the list is Jade Legacy by Fonda. This is the third book in the Greenbone saga. So the first one follows two gangs, and it's been so long since I've read the first two that I can't even remember what the two gangs are called. But we follow the Call family, who are basically the head of one of the gangs. And it starts as territory, in this city called Kigen. Actually, I think it's a country, but they're centralized in one city. But yeah, we follow Lan, Hilo, and Shay, the three siblings, and basically their the power struggles and the goings on of the gang. What's really interesting about these books is they have a magic system called Jade. So certain people called green bones can wield Jade. So basically it gives them powers, super strength, speed. I believe healing is one of them. Certain things you can do with Jade. And the green bones are part of these gangs. And if a normal person would try to use Jade, you would have, they would get really sick. So, yeah, either way, I loved the first two books. They're a little bit slower reads for me. They weren't like, easily consumable, but I enjoyed every minute I spent reading them. And I just never got around to the third one. I read the first two before the third one was out. It came out. I was so excited. I got it first day out, and I just never read it. Which, if you'll notice, is kind of a theme on this one. I get really excited. I read the first few, I buy them, and then they sit there. Yeah, so that's the first one, Jade Legacy. Okay, next book is Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winters. So this is the second book. I actually don't remember what the series is called, but the first book is it's called The Burning. First book is Rage of Dragons. So this follows a high fantasy world, and we are following our character Tao. So in this world, you basically are required to join the military for a certain amount of time, and there are different class systems, and depending on where your class is depends on what function in the military you are. Tao is planning on running away from this. He does not want to be a military person. He does not want to fight. But then tragedy strikes in his world, and so he basically changes his mind and he decides to rise in the ranks as far as he can so he can challenge one of, remember, it's a general or what, to get revenge for this bad thing that happened to him and his family. The magic system in this world is really cool. I think it's like 1 in every 10,000 men can be used. I forget exactly what they do. They become like super strong, I think. It's almost like berserking. I'm not 100% sure. It's been a while since I read the first one. I'll probably have to reread the first one to read this one. And then 1 in every, I think, 5,000 women can call down dragons, and certain women can control those dragons. Yeah, it's a revenge-centered story in the first one, and in the second one, I think we are going to expand in this world, and I'm excited for that. This is another one pre-ordered, first day it came, and then just never got around to reading it, so I really want to finish and catch up before that third one comes out. I'm not even sure when it's coming out, but I would like to catch up on that. Next one is The Autumn Republic by Brian McClellan. So this is the third book in the Powder Mage trilogy. So the Powder Mage trilogy follows again, high fantasy world with a cool magic system. So in this world, there are people called Powder Mages. I know, ironic, since it's called the Powder Mage trilogy. But they can basically snort gunpowder, and that gunpowder gives them powers. It is I don't know if it's Russian Revolution. It's some sort of revolution retelling. So we basically start our first book with a private investigator who is called to the palace after a coup, and it's a coup of, I think, 5 or 6 people, and he is hired to figure out which one of them is a traitor, because one of them is a traitor. We also follow one of the basically generals of the coup and his son in these stories. So I read the first one probably 2019, 2020, and then I read the second one last year, so I really want to finish up this trilogy. Oh, it's got a cool magic system. The characters are okay, which I think is why I haven't picked up the third one yet, is because I'm not as attached, but I really want to know what happens in the story, and I do like the magic. So yeah, that's the next one. Okay, fourth book on the list is Lachlan's by Robert Jackson Bennett. So I promise not every single book on this list was picked because it has a cool magic system, but I do have a type when it comes to fantasy books, and it's cool magic systems. So Lachlan's is the third book in the Foundryside trilogy. So in the first book, we follow a thief named Sansia, and in this world there are, we're basically set in one city, and there are different, I don't even remember what they're called. They're like clans or like mini cities within, but they're basically walled family groups. And inside those walls, everything is very ordered and, you know, good to live or whatever. And then there's a place called Foundryside where basically everyone not accepted into those families or part of that family group or hierarchy lives. And it's basically the slums. So Sansia is hired to steal an object. And when she does steal that object, she realizes it's part of a bigger plot, and then there's a bunch of people after her. Again, what's cool about this series, and the reason I picked it up, is because it has a magic system called scribing, which is basically like magical coding. So if you are versed in scribing, you can go up to an object and basically recode it so it's something else, so you can, or even so that it does something that you want it to. So you can code a door to only unlock with a certain password, or only unlock at this time, or stuff like that. This is the second series I've read or tried by Robert Jackson Bennett. I also read City of Stairs, I think it's called. I didn't love it. I honestly don't love the writing style or characters in this one, but the magic system is cool enough, and I've already read the first two books, that I do want to prioritize this, especially because they're so pretty spine-wise. I haven't been able to find the first book because the first book's like $100 in hardcover, but I want to keep them on my shelves, and I would really like to read the things on my shelves. So again, good enough that I do want to finish it out and see what happens, but yeah, I do just have good found family if you do like that. But yeah. Okay, next book on the list is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. This is a standalone fantasy novel. I bought it, I think, because I saw it on BookTube 2 years ago, maybe more. But it, as far as I remember, follows a young boy and his mother, and they live in basically a society that is on the outskirts of a kingdom, and their whole point is to defend the kingdom, I think, if I remember right. I believe there's elemental magic in this. I don't remember much about it. I think a murderous mom was mentioned. But yeah, I am excited to try this one. I want to see what all the hype was about, and I love elemental magic. I'm excited to see the world building in this, and that it's a standalone, so then that's just it, which is always nice. Okay, next book on the list is really more of a series, and it is the Expanse series. So the one, I'm on the third one, Caliban's War, is the one I need to read next. I think there's 9 books in the series. These are, I don't actually know what call it is, something as a space opera, but maybe a space opera. So basically we follow Holden and his crew on their spaceship, and they are a ship that gathers ice, and they hear a distress beacon and happen upon a ship that is completely deserted and overgrown by basically a mysterious alien element. So this is set, there are 3 main factions. There's Earth, Mars, and something called the Belt, which is the outer reaches of space where people live. And this is just basically a political sci-fi of all those factions moving around and this mysterious piece of alien technology. The 2 authors, I think, I don't remember, but James S.A. Corey is 2 people. I can't remember exactly their individual names, but I think they do a really good job of bringing such large concepts and such large political movements down to Earth and it easily describable using Holden and his crew. In the first 2 books, you also follow several other characters in both the first and second one. Specifically, there is like an old grandma lady who's a political badass, and I love her in the second one. But Holden and his crew are the only consistents through the first two books. I don't know if those other characters will come back in the third and beyond, but yeah, these are compulsively readable. They're so good. I don't know why I haven't picked up the third one. But yeah, I'm really excited for that one. Next thing on the list is Nona the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir. So this is part of the Locked Tomb series. Originally it was supposed to be a trilogy with Gideon the Ninth, Harrow the Ninth, and Alecto the Ninth, but they ended up putting out Nona the Ninth. So I read Gideon in 2020, and Gideon in 2021, and I read Harrow end of last year. And one thing I realized by reading, I think I read Gideon and Harrow almost exactly a year apart, and I was so confused in Harrow. And since then I've realized that Harrow is just meant to be a confusing book, but I think it didn't help that I read Gideon so far away. So Alecto the Ninth comes out this year, so I would like to read both Nona and Alecto before I forget everything that happened in Harrow. But yes, what are these? These are a sci-fi series. Basically, how it's described is lesbian necromancers in space, which is an accurate description, but it makes it sound like a romance, which it is not. Basically, the first book, Gideon the Ninth, is a locked door, what is it called? Mystery. There are 9 different planets, and a necromancer and, oh god, what are they called? Their fighter, can't think of what they're called. 2 from each planet are brought to this central location to compete to become basically a immortal necromancer. It's an exalted person that helps the king / god of this universe fight his war. But people start dying off. You have to figure out who the murderer is. The necromancy in this is really cool. I love the characters. Gideon is the best, and I really do like Harrow as well. She's not quite, a normal likable character, but I love her as a character. So yeah, I just really want to read Nona. I hear this is a very different tone than the first 2, and then Alecto when it comes out. Okay, getting towards the end, about 4 left. So the next one is Bloodmarked by Tracy Dion, and this book did just come out, so I'm not super behind on it, but I read Legendborn last year, beginning of last year, January of last year, and I immediately ordered Bloodmarked. I've had it on pre-order since January. It finally came out in November, maybe December, and I still haven't read it. So again, Bloodmarked is the sequel to Legendborn. Legendborn follows a girl named Bree, who is she is accepted to a basically, I don't really know what it's called, pre-college program at the local college. I think it's Yale. But her mother has recently died, and so it's a really good study on grief. And then as she goes to this college, she gets swept up into this Arthurian group where you can become, I don't know what they're called, a squire, maybe? I'm describing this terribly, but it is an Arthurian legend retelling. It has great studies on grief. It has good studies on racism. So there are, God, I don't remember what they're called, but basically there are certain families who are descended from the original Knights of the Round Table, and in times of darkness, so there's a demon world that comes through, those knights basically, possesses the wrong word, but they reincarnate inside these descendants, and then the descendant and that knight work together to fight the forces of evil. So it's got really good Arthurian lore, which I think I've said 4 times now, but yeah, it's so good. I'm so excited to read Bloodmarked, and I don't know why I haven't done it yet. Okay, so next one is Shadow and the Embers, as well as the final book in the Blood and Ash and the second book to this one. So this is the prequel series to the Blood and Ash series. I read the first 3 books last year, and then you're supposed to read this prequel book, then the 4th book in the original series, then the second one to this is the reading order I've been told. Blood and Ash is a fantasy romance. It follows, they're basically vampires and werewolves. It's very Twilight-esque, and we follow our main character Poppy, who is someone called the Maiden, who is basically a person chosen by the gods, sheltered. She's a maiden, all that stuff, and her journey as she realizes that maybe the people who have been protecting her, who have had her as the maiden, are actually the bad guys. And you go through the rebellion and her self-realization and stuff like that. I would not call these good quality books. I would call them good at doing what they're trying to do. They are a basic fantasy romance. They are fast. They are fun. They are ridiculous. But yeah, I loved the first three, so I would just want to finish up the series, which is 3 more books. And they look, okay, they don't look that big, but they're like, I think 600, 700 pages each, but I fly through them every time. So yeah, want to finish them. Okay, so I apologize for what is probably an angle change. It absolutely is a lighting change. My phone ran out of storage. Didn't tell me, so didn't record my last 2 clips. And then I was absolutely late for where I was going, so now we are like 12 hours later. But I want to talk about the last 2 books. So second to last is The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. This is another one that just came out recently. As a Cosmere novel, I obviously want to prioritize it. I am currently doing a reread of the Cosmere minus Stormlight because I read that rather recently. So I've read Warbreaker, Elantris, and then I just finished my reread of Mistborn Era 1. And all of those were rereads. I read most of the Cosmere. So now I want to reread Mistborn Era 2 and then finally get to The Lost Metal because I was so excited. I went on opening day. I went to like 3 different bookstores because I tried to shop local. And the first 2 were sold out. And then now I haven't even read it. So I'd like to move that on. For those who do not know, Mistborn is a story set on the world of Scadrial. And Scadrial is a place where basically what would happen if the bad guy won. So thousands of years ago, the good guy lost, the bad guy won. He's been ruling since then. And we follow in Mistborn Era 1 a crew of thieves led by a man named Kelsier, and we also follow a young thief who's kind of taken in with the crew called Vin. And the crew has decided their next big score or whatever is going to be overthrowing the Lord Ruler or the bad guy. So that is Mistborn Era 1. Mistborn Era 2, which is what The Lost Metal is part of, is set, I think, 100 to 300 years after Era 1. So we are now in like gunslinger times. And it's like a Wild West story. I don't remember much more than that. And then the big thing that everyone knows about Mistborn is the magic system. So it is basically in this world, if you are either a Mistborn or a Misting, you can swallow metal, and depending on what you are affiliated or your affinity is, you can burn certain metals. So people who can burn pewter become super strong. People who can burn tin can see far away. Some of the metals let you push and pull emotions. Some metals let you push and pull other metal, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm really excited to get to this one. And last, but certainly not least, is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I have not read The Poppy War. I own The Poppy War. Honestly, it should probably be on this list for how long it's been on my TBR. But everyone is talking about this book right now. I know almost nothing about it other than I believe it's dark academia, and it has to do with translation and kind of, I believe, racism within translations and translating other works to other languages and how that affects things. And I do believe there is a very subtle soft magic system in this. But yeah, I just really want to read this. I want to try it out, see what everyone's talking about. But yeah, and that is the last. Oh, actually, before I go, just look at this beautiful copy. I got it from a Fairy Loot. Oh, it's gorgeous. I almost don't even want to read it. But yeah. Okay, so that is the 12 books I want to prioritize this year. So I guess I'm going to have to check early next year and see if I actually have read them. But yeah, what kind of books do you guys want to prioritize this year? What are your goals for your TBR? Yeah, have a good night.